Welcome to Vampires and Mermaids. I'm Erin.
I'm Risha.
If you haven't followed us on Instagram already, go follow us at Vamps and
Mers.
That is on Instagram. And also, if you haven't already started following this podcast, wherever you listen, please do.
Yeah.
Feel free to drop us those little 5-star ratings.
Woo.
That helps us a lot to find new people. All right, well, with that, I guess we can jump right in.
Yes, we can. So mine is likely going to be shorter today because I did kind of a longer one last time. And this is the one that I was originally going to do, the more whimsical, like thinking it was going to be more whimsical, because that's what I intended to do after the one before last. And then I just kind of was like, it's short, it can go darker, so I'm going to give up and actually do Count Chocula.
And it was glorious.
So, this one, actually, you will, I think, appreciate, because I'm going to talk to you about the connection of horses to vampires.
Ooh.
Yes. And so I'm using my fabulous tome here, The Element Encyclopedia of Vampires by Teresa Chung. So in European vampire, in European vampire folklore, a horse, most typically a stallion, was often used to help find the grave of a vampire.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Especially in Albania, it was a white horse led to a graveyard and forced to walk over graves. So if they wouldn't walk over a grave, that meant that that was a vampire underneath there. Other areas of Europe had black stallions, but they had to be monochrome. And sometimes they had to be ridden by a virgin, or the horse itself had to be virginal. That was a whole deal, which it's like, how could you know?
Well, right, because I've heard of stallions in particular jumping out of pastures,
right?
Breeding a mare and jumping back in.
Yeah.
Proof that virginity is just a construct.
But it was also thought that if you walked a horse over the grave of a vampire several times, that it would destroy the vampire.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was a way of extermination. But to identify the grave of a vampire,
they had to not walk over it.
Yeah, they didn't want to walk over it.
So any horse people listening right now know that horses will just randomly spook at different things, their prey animal. The amount of times I have walked either of my horses past something that we have walked by hundreds of times, and all of a sudden they decide that tree branch today is going to kill me. And it is so frustrating. And you do have to work them through that, and you can do it. So I can kind of get that initial like, nope, and then working them through that.
Do it. Okay.
But I also just think that's funny because I guarantee if I walked my horses long enough, they would do that. I mean, Grace, one of my horses in particular, will just, if she hears a weird noise, will slam on the brakes, arch her neck up, and like, and stare wherever she thinks the noise is coming from. But I'm just thinking if that was badly timed over someone's grave, like, whoop, right? You're a vampire.
We're gonna trample over you.
Right. Huh.
Yeah. And a curious thing, too, though, is that there is some thought that vampires had the power to transform themselves into black horses.
Really?
So that's another, like, transforming into an animal.
I've never heard that before.
Horses. I know, that one is new to me. But it's some sort of European tradition or lore, I guess. There was a white horse in a Romanian case that was used to help identify the grave of a disease-causing vampire. Oh. So it was I'm not going to say this right, it was in Transylvania, but it was in the village of Vagwilesti. And a peasant by the name of Demetriu, he married a woman and had many children with her. 7 died within a few months of being born. Very tragic. And so that's why the people in the village were assuming that a vampire was amongst them.
And sorry, what year was this?
I am not sure. My source doesn't say.
But I'm guessing that this doesn't sound recent.
No, I wouldn't think so.
So this probably was at a time where the survival was very high. Okay, but disease-causing vampire.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, so a white horse was taken to the cemetery at night to see if it would pass over the graves of all of the wives' relatives, because they assumed it was the wife's relative coming back and feeding on their
Why not one of the husbands?
descendants.
It's always the woman's
The woman's fault. Yep. So the horse jumped over all the graves except for the wife's mother's, which is Joanna, and she had been suspected of witchcraft in her life already. So it's just furthering.
Oh boy.
Furthering that.
And maybe she was.
Yeah, could be.
But
when it reached her grave, the horse refused to move and started to beat the earth with its hooves. A few nights later, they had a son and went to dig up the grave, and they apparently were horrified by what they saw. They said the corpse had red skin, long fingernails, and long hair, and appeared to be sitting up.
Oh.
Yep. So they burned the corpse, returned home, and then the attacks and deaths stopped. So I'm thinking if you, like, scientifically, that's more of the, receding, as you're decomposing, your skin is, like, drying up and receding and stuff. So your fingernails look longer, your hair looks longer.
Well, and it does keep growing for a while, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know about the red skin. I don't know, but and the sitting up might be some sort of weird rigor mortis thing that happened, I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, that is creepy though.
Yeah. I mean, horseshoes are symbols of luck, but and horseshoes were also used to protect against vampires too.
Oh, I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. They invoked the shape of the crescent moon and invited the protection of pagan moon goddesses.
Oh, that's fun.
Mm-hmm. Like Artemis.
Just, you mentioned that the horse started pawing at the grave.
Yeah.
That's a little interesting to me because typically with horse behavior, and it can mean several things, usually you see the behavior of pawing when they're being impatient or they're bored.
So they're like, quit walking me through this
Yeah,
cemetery.
that's why I'm here. He's probably like, for God's sakes, get me back to my feed. So for example, I showed with a couple of gals. There were four daughters all in a row. They all showed horses. And they had one horse that would paw at the trailer every time they left him alone. So you'd time up to the trailer when you had a horse show and you'd go, check in or whatever. You never left them for very long. Yeah. But he would just, the second he couldn't see them anymore, just paw, paw, paw. And he would dig a hole in the ground and he would hit the trailer and scuff the trailer. Oh. And the second they came back, oh, hi. He was totally fine.
Everything's okay.
So they actually, to fix that, they, I hope people don't freak out over animal cruelty here because it's really not that bad. The two youngest sisters hid on top of the trailer one day with a tiny, tiny little jar of pebbles, and whenever he'd paw, they'd just kind of yeet a pebble at him. Not hard. Yeah, they weren't like BB gunning these pellets at him, but they were just kind of chuck a little pebble down at him and then hide. And he, more than anything, was like, oh, what is the sky god? Yeah. And yeah, because it wasn't enough to hurt him by any means, because they were, I mean, the top of the trailer is only like, you're under 12 feet high. Mm-hmm. Like, you're really not that far up. So you're only dropping a pebble from like 5 feet. Sure. So I think
sort of Pavlovian kind of stuff going on, conditioning him.
And it really freaked him out. And he ended up stopping after that, which was great because he was going to hurt himself.
Right. It's a training.
Exactly.
Method.
Otherwise, I've seen horses do it if, like, I'm lucky. I don't put up with that very well. My one horse does it sometimes if I'm grooming both of them and I leave her to go groom the other one and she wants food. She'll start pawing at the ground because she's bored.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what it sounds like to me, is that this horse was probably just walked around a graveyard and not being allowed to graze, and there's probably a ton of grass, and he was probably irritated and bored, so he started pawing at the ground, and they were like, vampire, absolutely a vampire. Right.
She was also a witch. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to know if the people who were doing this like didn't have horses, or which, I mean, around the time you'd think they would, like where was.
Sure. Well, or maybe they didn't connect that.
Maybe.
Maybe they thought it was all kind of supernatural.
They weren't thinking behavior wise. Yeah. Or was there the horse owner and he like rented this white stallion or whatever?
Yeah, that could be
and
too.
And he's watching these idiots parade his horse around and they're like, yeah, it's about supper time. He does that and just laughing to himself because he's making money either way.
I was going to say, it's like, oh, well, I'm getting money for this.
Right.
Gosh.
So I just like picturing that.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. That was my one.
No. You good. I appreciate your horse knowledge. It's always great. Because you do a really good description of like prey versus predator too.
Thank you.
And so I'm looking up, do horses actually sense danger?
Sure.
And main things are talking about their sense of vision, smell, hearing, and touch, because they are prey animals.
Yes.
So it's a little heightened and
Yes.
reactive, I guess would be a word you could say.
Well, and they have a like 300 and I want to say it's like a 350 or 345 degree of vision.
Oh, wow.
They can see because their eyes are on the side of their head,
Right.
which is one of the identifiers of a prey animal versus we are
Yeah.
predators. We have the eyes on the front of their head, our heads, and canines. They have all grinding teeth and eyes on the side of their head, so they can see pretty much all the way around them except for directly behind them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is why it's always like, do not
Don't sneak up on him.
Right. Do not do that to the cow. Do not do that to the horse. That is their one area, and they will get freaked out if you pop up in it.
Sure. Yeah. They're incredibly adept at picking up on our physiological changes, too. So if you're jittery, the horse is going to be jittery, too.
I can completely confirm that.
Yeah. And there's something else that says, do horses sense bad people? Yes, they do.
I can also confirm that.
Yeah. Attuned to our emotions.
I feel like they're very much like little kids or dogs, too. They just pick
yeah,
up on it.
That's what this one says, dogs,
Yes.
too.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
Yeah. But that was going to be my my possible whimsical one, but then there was a woman who sat up in her grave and had like red skin and
That's fair. A
and
little less
witches
whimsical.
and death. Yeah.
Well, I'll add a little whimsy to the story,
Ooh.
and we can cut this if you want, but this is just a horse is picking up on the bad
Oh,
vibes or the
no, I
good
love it.
vibes.
Go for it.
So I showed collegiately for pretty much all of my college time, and one of my really good friends also showed collegiately. Give me a random female name because I can't give her actual name on this.
Brenda.
Brenda, perfect. Brenda and I were really good friends, and we were hosting a show. So the college we rode at and rode for was hosting a bunch of other colleges to come ride our horses. And sometimes you had to sit out classes because there were just too many riders from your school in your division. And Brenda was one of the ones who was supposed to sit out. And so it was the Sunday event. So we showed on Saturday and Sunday. She showed Saturday. She was so nervous every time she showed. And she was a fantastic rider, but she'd get in the show ring and just panic. And you could see it. And then she wouldn't have nearly as good of a ride because the horse would start freaking out. And she was just the sweetest person. But she would get anxious and tense up and wouldn't just ride. She was too in her head, which I totally have done too. So anyway, Brenda rode Saturday. It did not go well. So Saturday night she went home, got really, really high, smoked a lot of weed because she wasn't going to have to be there Sunday. She was going to come help with it later in the day.
Yeah.
Do you see where this is going? One of the girls in her division got ragingly ill. So Brenda had to show up to the horse show bright and early because guess what, Brenda? You're up. So she shows up, grabs me. She's like, bitch, I'm still high. I should be freaking out, but I'm not. And you could just,
fine.
I mean, she had red eyes.
Oh, no.
And our coach came up to me at one point and she's like, did something happen to Brenda? Like, she looks like she's been crying. And I'm like, I think it's boy trouble, because I'm like, let's just fuck it.
What a friend.
Well, and you could be in really hot shit for smoking on the team. So I was like, yeah, I think the boy she's talking to is being a real piece of shit. And the coach is like, oh, that sucks. Like, all right, I hope Brenda does okay. She killed it. Actually, right before, you have a number that you hang on your back. It's like a piece of paper with black letters or black numbers, and you have to keep it for the whole season, which is problematic. And she lost hers, and our coach was so pissed. And she was, you better freaking win because if this is what costs you which it shouldn't have anything to do with it. 'Cause she literally just grabbed a piece of printer paper, wrote it really nicely, taped it on her back. It wasn't a big deal. It's not like she didn't have a number, but our coach was just furious, and that's what's going to make you lose, and was just ripping her apart. And I can just tell none of this is actually hitting Brenda the way it normally would because she's high. And she went in there and had seriously one of the most beautiful rides. Was just so relaxed. The horse was so relaxed. Like, normally you can tell she'd get tense and the horse would tense up with her. Nah, they looked like they had rode, and you didn't get to ride these horses ahead of time. You never rode these horses before the show. So she literally got on a horse she had never met and had just this beautiful ride. And I'm pretty sure it was just because she was so high she couldn't be anxious. And she won the whole thing, and it was amazing. And our coach couldn't yell at her for losing her number because she did win the whole thing. So, yeah, the ponies definitely know the vibes. I need to stop talking about ponies now because I have my book corner.
You do.
And
you do.
I don't want this whole episode to just be Erin talking.
Well, see, I was like, it'll be short, I think.
And you're like, yeah, Erin might come in with some pony facts.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, hopefully you're not upset about that.
Oh, no, not at all. I was hoping for it.
Yes. Oh, I'll always come through with the pony facts. Yay. Well, we're going to do something a little different on my side. We are going to talk about mermaids, but we're going to do kind of Erin's book corner. So I'm going to be talking about two different books. The second book is where the mermaids really come in. So we will get into the mermaid aspect of it. The first book, I finally read Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. And Risha's nodding because she knows I did not like this book. We discussed the mermaids in Peter Pan in episode 4, Akimu and Peter Pan Mermaids. And I had not read it. I read like the one chapter about the mermaids I could find for free, but it popped up on Libby, so I listened to it. This book was actually a play first. That started in 1904, and it was eventually published into a book in 1911. Overall, it has a 4.04 stars on Goodreads. So a pretty decent rating. I, before this, had seen like the Disney version, so I'm going to be comparing the two a lot. So I'm sorry if you haven't seen it. But the overall plot is that of the book is that there is a really, really, really broke mom and dad who have 3 kids. And I mean really, really, really broke, because when they have Wendy, the oldest, they literally are like, can we afford to keep her? And are like tallying whether or not they should keep her based on their accounts, which, yes, it is important to be able to afford a child.
Right.
But it was just a very sad start to the book.
It's like after the birth, though, is when you start doing that.
Right. And that felt very odd to me. And they did that with all 3 of their kids. And they're talking about how, oh, yeah, the youngest barely slipped by. Haha. And they were saying it in a very like comical way. And I don't know. I feel like kids in poverty isn't funny, so I didn't really appreciate that. I also always thought in the movie that they were fairly well off.
Yeah.
Maybe I haven't watched it in a while, but I always thought they were really well off, and they had a dog nanny because the dog was amazing, not because they couldn't afford a real nanny. The dog nanny continues to be amazing, by the way. She is the rock star of this entire book. So that's kind of the plot, and these kids are all in the nursery, so they all share a room, and they kind of start telling these stories to their parents about Neverland and all these crazy things they've seen or that they're dreaming of, and about Peter Pan. And the mom's like kind of concerned, but not really, because their kid's telling stories, until one day she falls asleep in the nursery. Peter Pan breaks in the room like he's apparently been doing. She freaks out, I think like slams the window on him or something. It's been a few weeks since I read it, and catches a shadow. She catches Peter Pan's shadow. Now, you'd think there'd be some type of wow, this is really strange that I could catch a shadow. No. She's just like, I caught his shadow. Should probably talk to my husband about this. And she just like shoves it in a drawer or something until her husband gets home. And they never actually discuss how strange it is that she could catch a shadow. Like, that's a completely normalified thing. It seems completely normal in this world. So her husband's like, well, that's no good, but I don't want him coming back in the house. So like, well, we'll just hang it out the window so he can come get it later and not come in. Which again seems weird. So Peter
shadow dangling.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, and then he doesn't come back, and it gets shoved in a drawer. And anyway, it comes down to Tink and Peter break in once again. Tinkerbell, the little pixie fairy friend, break in and are digging through drawers to find his shadow, and they find it. Yay, I guess. And the 3 kids wake up, and this is a different night when mom and dad are off at a party, and the dog is freaking out, and no one's listening to the dog, and the dog gets chained up outside, and again, the dog is the hero. And anyway, Peter Pan's like, hey, you guys want to go to Neverland and fly? And the kids say yes. Okay, fair. So he sprinkles them with pixie dust. They take off through the window. Yes. And he's like, we're going to the, second star to the right. Except in this, it doesn't make any sense. In the movie, they're like, oh yeah, that star. No, he's like, all right, guys, second star on the right and on till morning. And in the book, they're literally like, we have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Like, where are we going? And Wendy's essentially like, it's fine, just follow Peter. And then Peter continues to like fly around and then disappear in the clouds, come back, and straight up not know who they are. Like, he has no actual memory, and he'll be like, oh, hi, you're flying too? And Wendy's like, you got us out of oh, yeah, that's right, you. Okay, come on, let's go. And so they're like, is he going to disappear and like not come back for us? And then they're talking about how they're flying for so long that they're falling asleep. But if you fall asleep, you start plummeting to earth. No. And Peter thought it was funny to let them like almost hit the ground, which again, problematic. And he wouldn't teach them how to lay on their back so they could fly and sleep until later on. And then they were saying how they were hungry. And Peter's fix for this was to steal food out of gulls' mouths, which is disgusting and problematic, because how about you feed the children you just stole out of their bedroom? And again, he's forgetting who they are this whole time. And they don't know where they're going or how to get back either. So that just really freaked me out. They managed to get to Neverland, which is a really cool, very beautifully built world. It's very whimsical. It's very fun. There are flamingos and mermaids in the lagoon. And just the way it's built that way is a good time. And the Lost Boys are all really interesting, unique characters. And they just casually throw out how like Peter doesn't age. But yeah, when the Lost Boys get too old, he just kills them.
That's normal, right? That's fine.
Yeah, and it's just glossed over. Like, oh yeah, once they get too old, then I'll just off them and get some new ones. And it's like, I don't love how. And again, this is a children's book, so I'm reading this in my head thinking, if I had a 6-year-old, would I want to read this to them? And I just don't love how casually murder is handled throughout the whole book, and leaving with a strange man you don't know, and neglecting children. But I did enjoy the individual Lost Boys. They had some really fun personalities. Their house that they lived in, like under the tree, underground, was really cool. And they talked about how they each had their own individual tree that they fit in, that they fit just right, and they'd shoot down into their house. And it was kind of fun. The whole place was very dreamlike, too. They talked about how they built Wendy her own house.
Aww.
And they kind of just built it in like 5 minutes, but apparently it was a fully functioning, cool house.
Oh. It wasn't like the little straw like hut thing, or like there's a Peter Pan movie, I feel like I've seen that they built like a little tree like stick house.
Yes, and so that's what I thought it was at first, but then they describe how like the pirates found it later and were like, this is a really nice house, we're taking it back to the ship with us. And there's a part where Wendy talks about how like several of them were sleeping in it with her, so it was like a very comfortable So I took it more as like it's a dream, like they kind of built it and poof, this actually reasonable house was
like a magic tree house.
Yeah, so that was fun. Some of the other characters, too, were introduced. Smee is described as being the adorable pirate who, even when he was trying to be scary, everyone loved him. And I thought that was fun that stayed. The mermaids are introduced, and the other pirates, including Hook, who is pretty true to himself in the movie. If you want more about him, definitely listen to that episode 4, because we go into some of his German lore background. And then we get to the natives.
Oh, that's right. I remember you saying this.
Yep. And so again, I recognize that this book was published in 1911, and people are going to say, well, it was a different time then. I get that there was less education and it was a different perspective for people of privilege then, but the situation of Native people was still trash. That wasn't different for them. It was still trash for them. It wasn't a different time. And I'm not reviewing this book for people to read it in 1911. I'm reviewing this book for myself and people coming after me. It was described just really, really rudely. They were referred to savages a lot, and they were often called the Pickaninny tribe. Now, I didn't know what that means, but one reference or one resource that I found just said Pickaninny was just kind of a broad slang category for like all others. But I also found it as a term for a black child specifically, and it was spelt like pick a nanny. Either way, uncomfortable. All of the natives, as far as I remember in the book, and they were never referred to as natives. They were always savages or redskin.
And so Peter Pan was by a British person, right?
It was by a Scottish author.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So they're probably thinking a lot of the like island colonies.
And that's possible too.
Yeah, but it's not. I'm not saying it's
no.
right. But I'm trying to picture what he would have been picturing.
Well, and
I
I'm
guess
thinking it was kind of American Indians
versus
really? Cowboys. Well, they talk about like beating war drums and kind of the way they're depicted with like the one feather in the headband. I don't know. Maybe it was more island.
Oh, that's true. Like even seeing it, it
felt very fitting for the time of like the Cowboys versus Indians caricatures that were depicted around that time. I don't know. Hard to say. Either way, it was just, even if there is like a true Pickaninny tribe, I could not find one. I always found that was a slang term.
Sure.
And then what really, really bothered me too was the vocabulary of the natives. Other than Tiger Lily, who when she spoke, it was always very broken, and I get it's a second language, but it felt like broken pointedly, like it was supposed to be kind of funny. And I also back this up because when anyone else in her tribe would talk, it was just noises, like ugh, ugh, wah is a literal phrase. Yeah, so it didn't feel like there was any effort to actually make them people. They were just always side characters, and that really bothered me.
And a caricature even in the side character.
Yeah, it felt like they were made to be very aggressive too. Like I think it was even said they were prone to conflict or something like that. And it just wasn't great. And like I said before, there was also just a lot of casual murder, which made me really uncomfortable, especially in the battles with the pirates. Peter's just like, oh yeah, I've killed so many of those guys. And there was just, I don't know. I don't like it. There also was a lot of minimizing Wendy's personality. So she wasn't an individual who had her own preferences or beliefs. She was just a mother. and they'd call her mother, and Wendy stayed awake after all the boys went to bed and did their hemming and did their mending, and when they needed someone to care for them, they called on Wendy, and Wendy took care of them, and Wendy did this for them, and she just never had any actual personality on her own. It was just always that she was a mother because she was just kind of the adopted mother to Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. That's why they brought her to the island, and that pissed me off.
Yeah, her only importance is her usefulness to others.
Right. And she got that not because she necessarily likes those things, but because she's a woman. And she did seem to enjoy taking care of them.
Sure.
But I just really would have liked to see some of her actual personality come out. And now, again, before someone says, it was a different time. Little Women was published in 1868, which was largely female and went in depth to how people like Meg could enjoy being a mother, and that was important, but it wasn't the only thing about them.
Also, a time period, Jane Austen was even before that.
And I was hoping, I didn't make a note, but I literally, as I wrote down, I was like, do I bring up Jane Austen? And I'm like, nah, yes. Risha will. Exactly. So there were plenty of people who were showing that women were more than just mothers, or even if...
I mean, devil's advocate, though, is that those are women authors who were very much seen as less of a actual like story. They were writing novellas. They weren't writing novels. They weren't writing any impactful things according to the general society back then.
Which is so annoying. But yes, I do agree, and I get it. And this probably is just me being ragey feminist, but also and I'm reviewing this because will I read this book to my daughter? Would I want to read this book to anyone currently in modern day? No, I don't. So that's my overall review on Peter Pan. To kind of summarize it, they do... Oh, here's my last thing that also annoyed me.
Oh, no.
It ends, the kids end up being returned after some fights with Hook and battle scenes, and that's fun, whimsical, yay. They get returned to their house. The mother is so grateful because she has been absolutely worried sick about them. The actual mother, not Wendy. And Peter's saying how he's going to miss Wendy, and Wendy's kind of upset. And it comes down to the mother being like, it's fine. You can leave once a year for a week to go do Peter's spring cleaning. Peter, just come pick her up and she'll come do your spring cleaning for a week. Not go have fun with you, not hang out with you, but your spring cleaning. Also, this other child who kidnapped your children gave you no notice. You're just cool with sending your daughter off? And why not the boys? Like, if it truly was something that she trusted Peter and just wanted them to go have fun, why didn't she also send her two sons with Wendy?
Oh, they wouldn't have been able to do it the same way. She really had a gift for it, and they wouldn't know what to do.
It just drove me insane.
Weaponized incompetence.
Yes. Well, and then it flashes forward, and Peter can't tell the passage of time, and again forgets who these people are. So he shows up like 30 years later in the same house, and now it's Wendy and her daughter Jane. And he thinks Jane is Wendy, and Jane, of course, kind of the same thing, had started telling her mother, Wendy, about all these stories and Peter Pan. And so Peter Pan shows up and is like, great, come do my spring cleaning, Wendy. And he initially says that to actual Wendy, and she's like, yo, I'm old now. Like, I'm an adult.
You'll kill me if I go with you over
there.
Gosh.
Right. But you can take my daughter, though. And so for generations, the Darling women, I mean, they weren't darling because they'd married, but you know what I mean.
Right, yeah.
The Darling women just sent their children with this child for a random week every handful of years to do spring cleaning. And I don't like that story because, again, the lesson here is if a man comes to your window and asks you to come do a spring cleaning for a week, it's totally fine to go with him. Mommy's okay with it. And that's predator talk. I don't care what time period this was wrote in. That's fucking creepy. Oh, they don't mean it. No, that's creepy.
I wonder if there's any kind of parallel to Persephone and how,
maybe.
Like, she was in the underworld for some of the time. And I wonder if he took any kind of, I don't know, inspiration
maybe
or something. But it definitely way down into being very like extra creepy. There's issues with the Persephone one too.
Right.
But like yeah.
And it could, and I know there are people who are going to know a lot more about Peter Pan because there's a lot of theories behind it. The author J.M. Barrie had a brother, I think he was like 6, and he had a brother who was 14 at the time, and his brother ended up dying, and his mom became very, very distraught. And so J.M. Barrie was trying to like fill the spot of his brother and talk like his brother to fill this hole in his mom's heart. And I don't know if it's debated or if he's confirmed it or had confirmed it, but it's considered that he wrote Peter in place of his brother, and he was frozen at that age because he could never grow up in his mom's eyes. And so there are a lot of debates or theories that the Lost Boys are lost children.
Right.
They are described in the book as they're boys who have fallen out of their prams, essentially.
Right. I've seen that.
And if they're not claimed after so many days, then they just become lost boys.
Yep.
And girls are too smart to do that, which is kind of funny, but also like, oh my gosh, they're babies. Like, really?
Right.
More child neglect, I guess. So there are theories that it's more about loss and grief, and I get that. And maybe there is some deeper story that I'm not picking up on about motherhood and children as far as sending your daughter away for a week. I just think it's a bad message, though, because if you have to dig that deep to figure out the meaning, a kid's not going to, and this is a kid's book, and that freaks me out. So that's my review of Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. It got 2 stars out of 5 for me. Mostly those 2 stars are just because 1, I have to give it at least 1, and 2, because the world building was kind of cool.
Sure.
It was just really racist, sexist, and disturbing to, predatorily talk to kids like that.
I have a question. So has this then ruined your view of any of the movies?
A little bit.
Yeah?
A little bit. And
Okay.
I think part of that, I need to go back and watch them again because I have not.
Mm-hmm.
I actually used to like the second Peter Pan better.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember why, though.
I feel like she was sassier.
Maybe that's it. She had more character, I guess. I think she was also an only child, wasn't she? So I probably identified with that a little bit.
Yeah.
I desperately wanted friends.
Sure.
And I had friends, but I wanted siblings. I wanted a big family. So I think maybe there's a little bit of like projecting there.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go back and watch it again. But I also think just growing up has ruined the magic of Peter Pan for me, which is ironic, 'cause Peter would agree. But truly, I think I just see all these red flags, and when you're a little kid, you see things as whimsical and fun, and the man coming into your room and taking you out flying isn't scary, and as an adult, you're like, oh my God, that's problematic. So I think reading the book and just growing up has kind of ruined it for me. But I'll go watch it again, and I'll let you know.
Have you seen Hook?
I have not.
Okay. That one you might enjoy.
That's a new one, right?
It was like what, the late 80s?
Wait, was that Robin
That's
Williams?
Robin Williams.
Okay, yes, I did see that actually
Ooh.
because it's my friend Greta's, like, one of her favorite movies.
So good.
I have not seen it in a long time, but I do remember loving it when she showed it to me when we were in college. Okay, I will rewatch that because maybe that would make me feel better.
Well, because that one's also Peter Pan has grown up.
Okay.
So, yeah. Yeah. Also, the guy that voices Zuko in Last Airbender. Oh, you haven't seen that
No.
one. Okay, well, he's
Finish the thought, though.
Rufio. He's Rufio in that one.
Oh,
He's a really good voice actor.
that's fun.
I have what are the animals in the new Star Wars? Huge tangent here. And the little pug.
They look like they're based on puffins.
Right.
I almost said pierogies. That's not right either.
Pugwuggies.
It's not.
That's a Harry Potter thing.
Google it. My phone's recording TikToks. God. Philip would be so disappointed in me.
I know. I'm so disappointed
Is it a
in me.
puh? Because Chewbacca eats them, but then he like befriends one, doesn't he?
Oh, goodness.
I can picture them. They have huge eyes, and they were made to like cover up the puffins in the scenes.
Porg. See, I knew it was a porgs.
Oh, thank you. That was gonna drive me crazy.
So I have a porg that I got at Hong Kong Disneyland that is named Rufio.
That's adorable.
Yep.
Oh my God, that's cute. Oh, now I want to go watch Star Wars.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, okay, so we're already 35 minutes in. Do you want me to give my next book review, or is that too long?
Do you want to do it for next time?
I can do it for next time.
Yeah.
I didn't really cover a mermaid.
That's fine.
Okay, I'm good with
We
that.
talked about mermaids a little bit.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I'll take
call
it.
back to another one.
Okay, well, in that case, next week I will cover The Siren by Kira Cass.
Cool.
So if you don't want spoilers, listen to Risha's half of that episode, not my half of that episode, and or read it before. Yeah, this is your option.
Woo woo.
Honestly, though, if you're debating it, I didn't like that book either.
Just hear her like ream it.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily recommend reading it. I loved the first half and I hated the second half. So if you're debating to read it or not, or listen or not, if you don't feel like it's going to be your jam, feel free to just not and just listen to me bitch about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a negative
That's
Nelly.
fun. No, it's fun.
Oh, good.
It's cathartic.
Got a lot of feelings. All right, well, that's all we have for this week. Thanks for listening.
Either.
Oh, yeah, God. Yes, vote. If you haven't already, vote on our tagline. Cover your necks and hide your tails.
Watch.
Cover your necks and watch your tails. Or
Stay thirsty
and keep wet. Yes.
We'll figure it out.
Obscurantism and obfuscation.
Orally observed, gentle listener.
Gentle listener.
Gentle listener.
Gentle listener.
Obviated objects of oblivion.
Obambulating about.
Offered unto you.
Offered unto you.
Offered unto you.
In the Tapestry Radio Network.
TapestryRadio.org.
From our fancy to yours.